The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, has called on eminent Nigerians, as well as the flag bearers of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and the new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP candidate, Rabiu Kwankwaso, to join in his quest for, quote, justice in the Tinubu Gate controversy surrounding President Bola Tinubu's certificate. He says he will table the content of the deposition papers in a U.S. court before the Nigeria's Supreme Court. Arise correspondent Mary Chinda reports.
This World Press Conference by opposition leader Atiku Abubakar is coming days after the revelations in a deposition with a United States court by the Chicago State University, where the school denied the certificate submitted by President Bola Tinubu to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, saying he only schooled there. The PDP presidential candidate says there is no going back on filing his appeal at the Supreme Court with the freshly released academic records of President Tinubu.
The Constitution prescribes the requirements for those who seek the highest elective office in the land. It should not take months or indeed decades for the institutions concerned to be able to do their work in establishing the credibility of any certificates presented by candidates for public office. And the reputation of our country is at stake.
Atiku is quick to say he would accept the outcome of the Supreme Court verdict in the ongoing legal battle to nullify the election of President Bola Tinubu. He's also calling on fellow opposition leaders like Peter Obi, Rabiu Kwankwaso, and other eminent Nigerians to back his quest for justice.
I will only drop the fight when the court rules. If the court rules that I am right, fine. If the court rules that he is right, so that's the end of the fight. Because at the moment we are at the Supreme Court and there is no any other court than the Supreme Court.
Fielding questions from journalists on whether or not his continued legal battle was a betrayal of the friendship he once shared with President Tinubu, the former vice president is quick to share his thoughts.
In 2003, the PDP took over all the southwestern states, with the exception of Lagos. I stood between Obasanjo and himself. I said, no, you can't take over Lagos. Leave it. And he left it. So who is indebted to the other? Is it me or Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
His lawyer, Kalu, suggests the possibility of the Supreme Court accepting a fresh evidence.
That Bola Ahmed Tinubu forged the certificate he presented to INEC. That's one. Two, that the qualifying certificate from Southwest College to Chicago State University bears a female, indicating that that document does not belong to Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Then, the same document, oral deposition, says that the Bola A. Tinubu is Ahmed. But the NYSC certificate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, submitted to INEC has Adekunle. I don't know where the Adekunle and the Ahmed emerged from.
The former vice president and the People's Democratic Party say they remain optimistic of getting justice from the Supreme Court in the coming days. Mary Chinda, Arise News.
Meanwhile, the Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, says he welcomes the call by Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party to get things right in the country amidst the developing controversy on President Bola Tinubu's Chicago State University credentials. In a statement signed by Obiora Ifo, the Labour Party National Publicity Secretary, Peter Obi says he's on a quest to ensure a nation where justice is in place and it will not stop until Nigeria achieves a leadership that truly deserves. Meanwhile, the All Progressive Congress, in reacting to Atiku's press conference, urged him to accept defeat and quietly lick his political wounds with some dignity, stating that Nigerians rejected him at the polls. In a statement signed by Felix Morka, spokesperson of the APC, the party says Atiku told the Illinois court that he wanted to use the discovery in pursuit of the appeal court at the Supreme Court, but he had rather chose to use the same as an instrument of blackmail in clear contempt of the highest order of the court of the land. So joining us now this morning to discuss Atiku's press conference and react to issues emanating from it is Ilemona Onaja, a lawyer and head new media department of the dissolved People's Democratic Party Presidential Campaign Council. He will be joined by Liborous Oshoma, a lawyer, and Duro Meseko, Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressive Congress APC. Great to have the trio here. I call you guys the power-packed trio this morning. Let's make sense of the level of discrepancies going on in all of this interplay. And let's also segue them into the things Kalu said yesterday, because there's a new one also. They talk about NYC was not added, but Kalu talked about NYC. I'll come to you first, so Liborous Oshoma in the studio, then afterwards I'll come to Ilemona Onaja, then afterwards I'll come to Seka.
Yeah, I would limit myself strictly, not being a party member, not being a member of either of the team. I'll limit myself to the provisions of the law strictly. And I have a reason for doing that. So that I'm not dragged unnecessarily into the fight between, the comic fight for me, between APC and PDP. I call it a comedy of the absurd. As entertainment, as far as I'm concerned. First and foremost, I want to start with section 137 of the Constitution, and it says that a person shall not be qualified for election to the office of the president if he has presented a false certificate to the Independent National Electoral Commission. That's disqualification from being president of the country. And then I will now take you to section 29 of the Electoral Act, because all of these arguments back and forth will all start and end at the Supreme Court. They started at the Court of Appeal and it will end at the Supreme Court. So that's why I want to quickly dwell on the side of the law. If you permit me quickly, section 29. Every political party shall not later than 180 days before the date appointed for general election under this act submit to the commission in its prescribed form the list of its candidate. The list of information submitted by candidates shall be accompanied by affidavit. The commission shall, within 7 days of the receipt of the personal information, publish same in the constituency where the candidate intend to contest the election. Any person may apply to the commission for a copy of the nominated form or affidavit. Section 4, subsection 5, I read this here last time. An aspirant who participated in the primaries of his political party who has reasonable ground to believe that any information given by his political party candidate in the affidavit or any document submitted by that candidate in relation to his constitutional requirement to contest the election is false may file a suit at the Federal High Court against the candidate seeking a declaration that the information contained in the affidavit is false. Where the court determines that any of the information contained in the affidavit is false, only as it relates to constitutional requirement of the eligibility, the court shall issue an order disqualifying the candidate. And disqualifying the candidate and the sponsoring political party, and then declare the candidate with the second highest valid vote and who satisfied the constitutional requirement as the winner of that election. And then, if you now go to section 232 of the Constitution that talks about the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court shall, to the exclusion of any other court, have original jurisdiction in any dispute between the federal government and the state government or between states, and if so far as that dispute involve any question, whether law or fact, in which where the existence of a legal right depends. And then subsection 2 says, in addition to the jurisdiction conferred upon subsection, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction as it may be conferred by an act of the National Assembly, provided that no original jurisdiction shall be conferred upon the Supreme Court with respect to any criminal matter. So, if there is criminal allegation, first and foremost, the first thing would be for investigation, because prosecution starts from investigation. And once investigation is conducted, it is not in the mouth of parties. You can allege a crime, but there is an authority saddled with statutory responsibility to investigate that crime, whether here in Nigeria or in America. And once a crime is now established, that is when you can now take such a matter to court. It is no longer, it is not within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to try criminal matter.
Okay, good. So, Ilemona Onaja, your take on all of this. Ilemona Onaja?
With due respect,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Go ahead, yeah. Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, so with due respect, I'd like to make a very small clarification with respect to Mr. Oshoma's submissions. The allegations here are not of a criminal nature. The position of the Constitution in section 137, subsection 1J, is with respect to the fact of forgery, simpliciter. It doesn't make any provisions with respect to a trial. It doesn't make any provisions with respect to convictions. It doesn't make any provisions with respect to punitive measures or a punitive sentence in any way whatsoever. The Supreme Court has held, as far back as in 2017, that the mere establishment of forgery, simpliciter, on the face of it, is sufficient enough to issue an order disqualifying the candidate from the election. And that is the simple position of the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. While there are other issues which, there's sufficient reason for discussion and are worthy of mention when it comes down to the formulation of a legal issue for the provisions, for the purposes of filing an appeal to the Supreme Court. This is a civil matter. It is not criminal in nature. There's no criminal allegation. There's no request for a
Ilemona, can you hear me? Good. I've been trying to get you in all this while. Can you quote your case law on that? Because we want to have a robust intellectual engagement this morning. Can you quote your case law on this last submission you made?
I think the case that you're looking for is Honorable Hassan Saleh versus Chris Abba and others. That is the case that you're looking for. It's a case decided by the Supreme Court in 2017 where the position of the court is that the proof of forgery, simpliciter, without more, is sufficient enough to ask and give an order that a candidate in the election be disqualified from that election. Very straightforward.
Okay. Mr. Duro Meseko, can you also weigh in on this conversation?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Bless you.
It's very simple. I think the whole essence of this discourse is about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and whether he graduated from Chicago State University or not. And a deposition, you all know, was taken a few days ago. And the registrar of the institution was very unambiguous in his submission that he indeed was a student of the institution. So I think what is happening in Nigeria now is simply politics. It's just politics. And I see it as just playing to the gallery. Because those who should know have already concluded, have asserted that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was a student of the institution. I don't see why we should, keep punching ourselves over nothing.
Okay.
All right. Okay, let me just say that. Yeah, hold on a second. I want to just say that for Mr. Meseko, beyond the fact that he graduated from the Chicago State University, what's also under contention is the fact that he forged the certificate which he presented to INEC. I'd like to get your statement on that, and for everyone, for Mr. Oshoma and also for Mr. Ilemona. Forged certificate is not...
Which certificate are you talking about?
Hold on, sir.
Chicago State
Hold on, sir. Let me
certificate?
establish my question. Thank you, sir. So, the certificate, Chicago State University registrar, under oath during the deposition, had said that they did not issue the diploma that was presented to them, which President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had presented for his candidature to INEC. So they didn't. So maybe the question I would ask you, and for the lawyers in the House, would be this. If if Chicago State University did not issue that diploma, who did? Was that diploma forged? So he might have graduated from CSU, from the deposition, but where did he obtain the diploma, the certificate that he presented to INEC? Was it forged? And if it was forged, then it's substantive what Mr. Ilemona said. I'll start with you, Mr. Meseko, to respond to that in terms of where did the president obtain the certificate from, since CSU didn't issue it to him? And then for Mr. Oshoma and Mr. Ilemona, what would that portend? Could he have obtained it elsewhere? And then if it was forged, what next? Please, Mr. Meseko.
Well, let me just put it to you that you will recall that Mr. Westberg himself, that's the registrar of the institution, said that diploma certificate was just a ceremonial document, and that what matters was the transcript issued by the institution, to students. And of course, he had the transcript. So what are we talking about here?
Meseko, he submitted
the most important thing is,
Mr. Meseko, he submitted a certificate. That's what's that's what is being scrutinized currently. I want you to speak to the certificate, not the transcript. What's under contention here is the certificate, which CSU said they didn't issue to him, which the president submitted to INEC. I don't know if he submitted a transcript, but he did submit a certificate from CSU. Where did that certificate come from?
Okay, my simple take to that is why we have the courts to preside over issues. The Supreme Court is there, then you take your case there to go and prove it. If you so feel that you are very, very sure that what you have discovered is the truth, then let's take it to the court.
All right.
They have the right to ventilate their anger, at the right places, and Supreme Court is one of them.
Okay, Mr. Ilemona, I'd like you to comment.
We do not need all this yo-yo dance taking place up and down Nigeria.
It's not a yo-yo dance, it's quite important. But let me go to Mr. Ilemona with regards to the certificate. Yes.
Okay, Ayo, it's a very simple thing. Section 137, no, before we go to 137, Section 1, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria simply stipulates that this is the ground law of our country. It is the supreme law of our country. It is in legal terms, the very foundational legal framework of our country. So everything else pales in significance. Section 1, subsection 3, anything that is inconsistent with the provisions of this Constitution is null, void, and of no effect whatsoever to the extent of that inconsistency. Then you go to section 137, subsection 1J, clearly stipulates that anybody who submits a forged certificate, it does not say a forged transcript, it does not say a forged whatever. It says a forged certificate. So it is the Constitution that makes it important. And the Constitution is very clear. It relates to a certificate. Did he submit the transcript about which he speaks? I don't know that. But did he submit a certificate? Yes, he did. Now, the Supreme Court has again, in the case of APC versus Obaseki and others, also reached a conclusion that in determining the veracity or otherwise of a certificate, a denial from the issuing authority, from the issuing institution, is germane to determine whether or not that certificate is original and authentic or it is fake and forged. In application to the extant case, the issuing authority, the issuing institution, Chicago State University, has clearly, unequivocally, without doubt, without hindrance or restraint, stated the very simple fact: this certificate submitted to INEC did not emanate from our institution. Beyond that, there's no fishing expedition required. There's nothing left to question. There's nothing left that is undoubted. There is no smoke. There is nothing. It is staring at us in the face clearly. The issue at hand is not whether or not President Bola Ahmed Tinubu went to CSU, even though there are substantial questions surrounding that. The issue at hand is that in submitting on oath from EC9 to INEC, the electoral umpire, did he submit a forged certificate? Without doubt. At this point where we stand, the answer to that question is yes. Everything else you are being told is an attempt, failed attempt, it must be emphasized, to detract from that truth. Why is this important? It is only important because our constitution says so. So this isn't a comedy. This isn't a back and forth. Unless we are seeking to trivialize our constitution, not just in this regard, but in regard to everything else it contains, we must place sacrosanctity to that provision. And it's very simple. Did you submit a forged certificate? Yes. Now, in the case I had cited before, and this will come up, I believe, in court, and there will be further arguments about it, but in the case that I had cited, it doesn't even just relate to one election. The question is, have you ever submitted, in the forms, there is a question that is asked, have you ever submitted a forged certificate to the electoral umpire? In Hassan Saleh versus Chris Abba, that I earlier cited, it goes all, the Supreme Court says it isn't even just about one election. It isn't even just about this electoral cycle. It is about all eternity. So there are valid questions to ask. Did you submit fake certificates in 1999? Did you submit fake certificates in 2003? This is where we'll now ask the question about Bola Adekunle Tinubu, the certificate, the NYSC certificate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ilemona. I think you've established your point. Mr. Oshoma, let me just modify it a little because
I understand your question.
Yes. Well, in terms,
let me say this. The rules of court. You see, that's why I'm laughing, is that these politicians know what they are doing. These laws, the Constitution, the Electoral Act, they made it. And so when they give with one hand, they take with another. And so that's why we say you read the laws holistically. Forgery, for example, thank God my learned colleague cited the fact that issuing authority. So let me quickly dwell on that before I come to Section 29 and the old Section 30 of the Electoral Act 2010. The position from what I read, that this certificate was issued by a third-party vendor. Do you know why police in Nigeria don't win cases, hardly win cases? Because they leave loopholes. The next question should now be that the parties should be asking themselves is, who are third-party vendors? There's been argument back and forth, for and against, that third-party vendors are legally authorized to issue certificates, diplomas, replace diplomas in some schools in America. The question you should be asking yourself is, these third-party vendors, and that's where investigation must come in. These third-party vendors, are they authorized to issue replacement diplomas in CSU? Some have said no, some have said yes. But it now depends on investigation to establish all of that. And so that at the end of the day, we don't just, blow hot air and only for you to get to court. So the court has disappointed us. The court will deal with facts. Who is the issuing authority? Let me quickly finish.
Did you read the deposition? I'm not sure you did read it.
Yes, I did.
Because if you read the deposition,
yes, I did.
There was a particular part where, hang on a minute. There's a particular part, because I want to get the facts out. Yes. There's a particular part where the man was asked, what's the procedure of getting a replacement certificate? And they say you go to the website. If you also go to the website, you'll see that there's no mention of third-party vendors.
That's what I'm saying.
So in the deposition, there was no mention of third-party vendors.
That's what I'm saying.
So that's why I said, did you read the deposition?
It is not in my mouth or yours to say for sure. Because when you say third-party vendors, to further add to what I am saying, you also agree with me that in some universities in America, third-party vendors issue diploma. Do you agree?
But that's not the case in
CSU.
No, wait,
I am saying, that is why I'm saying,
that's not the case in CSU.
It is not as clear as ABC.
Yeah.
There will be
CSU was asked that question at the deposition.
Rufai,
that's what I'm saying.
What I am saying is this. there is need for further investigation. When you allege a crime,
directly from the deposition.
a crime is being alleged, so that
But
so
what
that
I'm
somebody
quoting,
who
Mr.
has
Shoma,
committed
what
a
I'm quoting to
crime
you is directly from the deposition.
that you need to go
CSU
to
denied.
the site.
They said you
And if
come
you
to
look at
them
that
and it's through
site,
them they issue it.
If you look at that site, it talks about clearance from associated students. What do you call it? That if you go to the site, if you get to that site that you're referring to, it talks about clearance certificates from associated student. I've forgotten the full name now. If I had my phone here, I would have shown you. Yeah. Which shows that truly, indeed, there is a third party involved.
But CSU said nothing of such in deposition.
No, the CSU said you refer to the site. That's why I'm telling you that when you allege a crime in law,
there's nothing of such in this. Actually, I think you should read it properly.
I read all of these things, and I'm telling you that
I read everything in detail.
so that you don't give a leeway to a criminal to go. You need to. That's why in criminal law, there must be a watertight investigation, so that when you are confronted with the proof of evidence, you have nothing else but to admit that yes, this is. But you know what we do here? We leave some evidence hanging, and yet you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, because the law says that if you have ever presented a forged certificate, and then the law further goes further to say who can challenge that forged certificate. In the old law, section 30, anybody can challenge, and it was on that old act that the case of Ada was decided on. The case of Degi Eremio was decided on. But in this new law, section 29 limits who can challenge. So you need to look at all of these things holistically, so that at the end of the day, like we say in law, so you don't create a loophole.
I just quoted the facts to you based on the deposition. It's the facts I quoted to you.
Rufai, you are.
It's the fact I quoted. No, I'm a man of facts. You know me. It's the fact I quoted to you based on the deposition.
Rufai,
let me read.
That's the fact of that. There was no place they talk about third-party deposition. That's why I said read the document properly.
Liborous, let me ask you, if CSU is making it clear under oath, they know that they could be in serious trouble.
Yes.
But under oath, they said this document is not from us.
It was issued.
No, hold on. No, hold on.
They further said.
So
that you take all of them together.
Hold on. Let me land on this. If what they are saying is, oh, we did not issue this, meaning, because if you have a third party to issue, that third party is not doing it of their own free volition. They're doing it because you authorize them. Yes. Right or wrong?
Yes.
So if you did not authorize anybody, when you're under oath, you will say, this document is not from us. When they say it is not from us, could it possibly be from a third party? Do you think when the third party represents them? Is that not true?
No, the third party represents them.
Yes.
So in this case, that's what I'm saying. You need to investigate that leg of the third party.
But they are under oath, Ruben. I'm sorry, not Ruben now, Liborous. They are under oath, Liborous. They're under oath. And they said it is not from us.
Do you know
meaning that whoever issued it was not authorized by us, or was that an assumption?
I tell you, I did not issue this document, but it was issued by a third-party vendor. But that third-party vendor didn't come from me. It didn't come from me.
You've not read the deposition. They never mentioned the third-party vendor.
We're talking about under examination.
You're a lawyer, you deal with fact. I'm talking about fact.
Yes.
Let's talk to what's in the deposition under oath.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Under examination, you say that this document was issued by a third-party vendor. And you know, because
but if that is if there is,
yes,
that is if there is.
So that's why I said you need to investigate.
I didn't mention that. They didn't mention that.
No, what was said in the document and what was said in the court.
If we can,
you see,
if we can, let's move on
quickly, so that we get this thing clearly. If you leave that part hanging, and at the end of the day, even under investigation, under prosecution, and the man comes and says third-party vendors are permitted to issue this certificate, the first step should be what was submitted. All of those documents need to be there.
Let's go on.
So that we look at the law holistically, so that we don't just hang on to one part.
To a large extent, Liborous, to a large extent, I think I want to agree with you that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. So you do have a point in that one. But let's go to Ilemona. Ilemona, you wanted to make a point, but I have a question as well. Very quickly then, because I can hear your voice going on and on. Ilemona can go on and make your point quickly.
Can I make the point now?
Yeah, make that point very quickly, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay, if you go to page 30 of the deposition, line 23, the question is, I am going to hand you what has been marked as Exhibit 5, entitled Undergraduate Diploma Order Replacement Form. And this is the form that is posted on CSU's website and on the Graduate Diploma Order or Replacement Form. The answer is yes. Do you recognize this document? The answer is yes. Do you people fill out this form in order to order a replacement diploma? The answer is yes. The next question is, and does everyone have to fill out this form? And the answer is, if they want to order a replacement diploma. Now, if you narrow it down in the deposition, Caleb Westberg, the CSU registrar, has stated very clearly that if you want to order a replacement diploma, you have to come directly to the institution. I do not know where we've gotten this argument about third-party vendors that was not even introduced, that was not mentioned, that was not referred to, that was not countenanced in any way, manner, shape, or form by the university itself. The university says, if you want to get a replacement diploma, you have to come directly to the school, go to the school's website, fill out that form, submit that form, and then they will continue the processes. Okay. So when anybody brings up the issue of a third-party vendor, where is that coming from? Why are you giving us a smoke screen?
Okay.
It's a smoke screen that has no bearing whatsoever on the position.
Yeah, okay. Ilemona Onaja, thank you very much. Duro Meseko is still with us, and here in the studio with us in Lagos is Liborous Oshoma. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we continue the conversation. Please do stay with us. You're welcome back to the morning show, where we're having conversation about the most important issue in Nigeria today. This affects everything to do with our government and governance and the future of our democracy. So we still have in the studio with us Liborous Oshoma, a lawyer, and also we have Duro Meseko, who is Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressive Congress, as well as Ilemona Onaja, a lawyer and head New Media Department of the dissolved PDP Presidential Campaign Council. So let me come back to you before I go to Ilemona. Let me come back to you, my dear friend here. Let me ask you, we have the deposition here. We have the one that is verified, certified, and anything else you want to say about it. Can you let us see whether there was any mention of a third party? And the reason I'm being specific about a third party is to say, first and foremost, there was no mention of a third party in there. And if I own a document and I go under oath and I say clearly that this document is not from me, it means I'm saying under oath that I did not issue and I did not ask anybody to issue on my behalf. So is there anywhere that they might have implied that that document could have been issued on their behalf by a third party? Because a third party will not do it without their approval. So let's just let's inform the public clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Usually third-party vendors are authorized.
Authorized. That's the key
school.
word here.
If there is no mention of third-party vendors in the deposition,
yes,
and you said, according to you now, third-party vendor was smuggled in by parties in the matter.
I didn't say that.
Oh, okay. According to Rufai. So in this case, what that means is that there is need for investigation, because criminal allegations of a crime are not established on the face of the fact that, oh, I allege a crime. And then somebody says, oh, this document did not come from me. The next question should be, at the election petition, were these facts pleaded and was evidence led? Okay. Because you brought me here to discuss law. Okay. Was evidence led? If evidence was not led, the case that my friend cited it was decided under the previous section 30, where anybody, just anybody, can challenge the fact that there's a deposition that was deposed to INEC was false. But in this case, section 29.5 says it must be a party member. Were this evidence laid at the court of first instance? If they were not laid at the court of first instance, then I am sorry, they cannot be taken at the Supreme Court. That is the position of the law. But on the case of crime, forgery, that will have to be investigated by the investigating authority. We can only do a bit here, but there must be an investigation.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Meseko. Mr. Meseko, the APC member who's joined us from Abuja. So let me ask you then, we have a situation on our hands in Nigeria today. Some people are saying, look, this is legalese and legality, and some people are saying it's just a moral issue if it is alleged that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria might have forged. There is no proof of that based on what the lawyers are saying. They're saying that the fact that it is not owned by the authorizing authority in the US, which is the CSU, is still not confirmed as forgery. So help us understand, where do you stand? Do you consider this as issue of morality and legality? Is that where you stand as well? Is that the position of every member of APC that, look, that's morality, legally is not an issue?
Thank you very much. Our position in the All Progressives Congress is that all of this is just politics at its peak. Because, pray, what will an otherwise very brilliant student in the person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu be doing with a forged certificate? The Southwest College that he attended, he did so well there. You did so well in an exams, and then you go ahead again to forge, a certificate for doing so well. It doesn't make sense. And he also did so well. He went ahead to the CSU to perform very brilliantly. So what are we talking about? How will you do? I mean, it's just commonsensical. You are a brilliant student. You went to a college. Southwest College didn't say, oh, he didn't attend our college. He attended and he passed well. Then some people somewhere will now come up with, oh, he forged this certificate.
Okay, Mr. Meseko.
I think to me,
Mr. Meseko.
Doesn't really make sense.
Mr. Meseko, this cannot be said to be some people somewhere. A court of proper jurisdiction in the United States has asked the question from the issuing authority, which is the CSU. The CSU said, this document we did not issue. And just like we were having conversation with Liborous Oshoma, who is a very good lawyer and who has accepted the fact that if there is no authority behind being issued by anybody else, including third party, then it means that document is not real. And the other word for real will be fake or forged. We're not saying that until the court says it, but from your perspective, be honest. We have just a few minutes to wrap up. Be honest, from your perspective, will you say this is legality or morality?
Again, I will say that all this is politics, because we know that, it's just looking for a needle in a haystack.
Okay, if that's your case, then let's move on.
At the end of the day, even if an investigation is carried out.
That's fine then. Let me just go on to Ilemona then. Just final question from Ilemona. Ilemona, where do you go?
Okay, I would like
from here, Ilemona. Where do we go from here?
I would like to very quickly end by addressing two issues. One on the legality. And it's very quick, it's very necessary to clear up some of the obfuscations that my friend Liborous Oshoma is bringing to the studio. One, this is not a criminal case. There's no charge. A criminal case can only be, begun by a charge and everything. No, we're not alleging, we're not asking that he be tried criminally, we're not asking that he be punished. We're asking that the Supreme Court should take cognizance of the fact of forgery. We're not delving into mens rea or actus reus or any of the other smoke screens that people are trying to do. In Hassan Saleh versus Chris Abba, the Supreme Court rebuked the Court of Appeal for delving into whether or not what the thought processes were and all of that. That's not the issue here. This is not a criminal case. The Supreme Court has been very clear. This is a civil issue. And on the basis of preponderance of evidence, rather than the standard of proof of reasonable doubt, simply preponderance of evidence, is there a fact of forgery? The answer to that question is yes. So remove that. On the other hand, we only just saw the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, as the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, say that the basis for opponents to ask for a disqualification of candidates is on the grounds contained in Section 137. We are asking, as a matter of the foundation of our request is Section 137, subsection 1J, presentation of a forged document. Very simple. The judgment of the Court of Appeal has given us impetus to actually make that request. Then on the third ground, when you begin to speak about morality, only a few months ago, Mesoma, that young lady, passed an exam. She passed her JAM with rather good scores. She goes ahead to forge extra scores. The country as a whole criticized her, and then we have punished her that she will not be able to get admission into a university for another 3 years. If what Mr. Moka has just said is true, then as a country we need to gather together and go and apologize to that child. If you are saying to us that it doesn't matter, as long as he was a brilliant student, it doesn't matter if he forged a document, then we should gather and go and apologize to that child.
Ilemona, as we start to wrap up, for the sake of clarification and for the sake of our audience, we have to reiterate. In the deposition, there was nothing as regards a third party in the deposition. You know, we just had to reiterate that again for the sake of our audience. Mr. Liborous, Oshoma, your last stab at this as we wrap things up.
Thank God my friend and colleague talked about the fact that it's a civil matter and that these facts were not pleaded in the court of first instance, and this fact they just discovered now, and so they're asking the Supreme Court too. The question is, by virtue of Section 29, of the Electoral Act, if these facts were not pleaded from the Court of First Instance, and at what point did you recognize this fact? What I am saying basically here is that the Article team should have done this long ago, and they came belatedly. And by the clear explanation of Section 29, if you're not talking about allegations of forgery and criminal investigation, which the law has permitted that they have the powers to do, then you're already shut out by virtue of Section 5.
By the virtue of this conversation, legalists can go on, but we'll leave all of this decision to the Supreme Court. Secondly, we are not calling anything, we are not making any decision as regards maybe the Supreme Court will admit or not. And thirdly, by the virtue of the deposition, what we read from the deposition is the fact that CSU said they did not issue the certificate that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu presented to INEC. So those are our facts right here at the Arise News channel. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, the wonderful panel this morning.